rocking and rolling. Lights, camera, action. So first off, I want to thank all of you for being here today. As I mentioned a moment ago, this is my first in-person presentation since before COVID. And I did a lot of work online, doing workshops online, but I missed the in-person stuff. So it's beautiful to just have all you guys here, see your faces, and I'm really excited to share this wisdom with you guys. So this is the Wellness Mastery Workshop. The whole goal here is to learn the tools to heal thyself. We're going to dive really deep into that today. And I want to get clear, first off, what does it mean to heal? To heal means to make whole. And part of what we're going to be speaking about today is this yin and yang philosophy based on ancient Taoism. Has anybody ever studied Daoist philosophy, some East, like Buddhist stuff? I got a couple hands. Okay, a little bit. My dad's like, yeah, I studied this. Like, my dad was definitely a good mentor for me. And just quickly, I want to share, I got my father here with me, Agamemnon. That's where I get my crazy Greek name, Odysseus, from. He's actually been nominated for multiple Emmys, and he's here to film for us, so I'm very grateful to have him here. So quick little round of applause for my dad. There we go. Give my dad some love. So back to the task at hand. So I want to be clear. What does it mean to heal? To heal means to make whole. And so towards the end of the presentation, I'm going to hand out my books on shadow awakening, and I'm going to go into some of the basics around that. And the vision here today is I've talked to Elise, and I've also talked to Alice. And we want to start doing regular workshops talking more about how do we blend mental and emotional health with physical health, okay? And I'm going to touch on the agenda for today. So essentially, it's a blueprint for healing is what we're going over. So this is our agenda for today. I'm going to go over my background briefly, because you got to go, like, who is this guy up here talking? Does he even really know what he's talking about? Then we're going to go into quantum thinking, which is the first thing that I speak about in my book. Welcome, what's up? Then we're going to go into Daoist healing philosophy, and I'm really excited about that part. I'm really diving in. I'm like a student/teacher. I feel like the true essence of mastery is when you're able to teach things, because I learn when I'm teaching this stuff to you guys. So I'm really excited to share all that. Then we'll pass out my book. I'm going to explain the basic tools of shadow work and how you can apply that to my life, and you'll all get a copy of my book. And just so you know, when I do hand out the books, there is a little super short survey to give me some feedback. And I'd like to do future presentations, and I'll tell you guys a little bit about that today as well. And I have some pens up here too. I'm just telling you guys now so I don't forget, okay? So let's talk about my background real quick. So who am I? Odysseus, some dude with a crazy Greek name. I go by Odie for short. My DJ name is Odylicious. Anybody here take my classes here at the gym? I teach a couple classes as well. I know Todd took my class. Some of you guys. Alice took my class. She loved it. The walnuts were great. I'm a coach. Author. I'm super excited. I published my book for like years and years. It was like one of my lifelong goals to publish my own book, and I finally did it. So I'm super grateful for that. I'm a mentor, and I've been coaching for 20 plus years, 20,000 hours of experience. They say to be a true master, you have to do 10,000 hours of something, and I've hit double that. And the reason why is like, I love sharing wisdom with people. I started out with a couple of gyms, got my degree in kinesiology. In the last 2 years, I got certified as a trauma coach, and multiple fitness certifications. Now, part of my story is that over the years, running my 2 gyms right here in Novato, is that I realized is I could teach you the best fitness program. I could give you the perfect diet. My degree in kinesiology emphasizes nutrition. But if you don't have your emotions right, you're still going to struggle, okay? And so that's the essence of what I'm going to be sharing with you guys today, and that's the essence of shadow work. When I say essence, just to be clear, and by the way, if I talk too fast, just raise your hand and say, slow it down. Am I loud enough for you?
Yes, thanks.
Sweet. I like to just get up there and just speak loudly, pronounce myself. So, as I was saying, I was helping ladies make their butt look good. I was helping people change their diet. Sometimes I would give speeches 10 years ago, and people would lose 30 pounds just from listening to me speaking about nutrition. A lot of it is this stuff I'm about to show you in a minute here. But I realized that no matter how good your butt looks, if your head's full of crap, you're not going to see the results that you want. And so that's what got me into studying some of these books over here that you can check out if you have questions about that as well. Dr. Joe Dispenza, Dr. Sue Morter, 5 Spirits, Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, The Tao of Physics, all amazing books. I was going to bring more, but I was like, I can't bring too many books. It's too much to carry, right? But I'm like a super nerd. I love studying. My dad's a sound geek, and I picked it up from him. And so the essence of what I'm saying is learning how to manage your emotions, specifically your oppressed, suppressed, and denied emotions, is where the real gold is in terms of your healing journey. And remember, to heal means to make whole, right? So a couple more things about me. The second facility, I opened my own gym, ran it for 11 years, opened a second corporate gym with WBE Electric. Does anybody here ever heard of WBE Electric? So I've been working with the CEO for 7 years. It's one of the largest female-owned corporations in the Bay Area. And I was texting her today. She's out in Maui. I was like, can I come out and visit you? I'm like, what's up? So that's been a blessing. I did multiple speeches. I've helped the company lose over 1,000 pounds over the years, coaching them, which has been awesome. But then I started getting into some of this deeper stuff. So like I said, I've been a nerd just reading all these books. And if you want more book recommendations, please let me know. I got like hundreds. I started working, well, there comes a point where you can read so much, but then you need a mentor. So 3 months ago, I hired a Daoist shaman. She was actually trained for years by a Tibetan Lama. And that helped me level up a lot of the stuff that I've been studying, specifically that book over there, The Five Spirits. And that book was phenomenal. And so I'm almost done working with her. I've been doing her online school. And recently, this month, I started working with this quantum healer certification. We're learning under an Oriental medical doctor. He's actually out in Mill Valley, and his name is Darren Starwin, and his program is phenomenal. I just started that. So it's one of those things. You can study all you want, but sometimes you got to hire a mentor, a coach, and a guide to take you to that next level. Now, with that said, I'm actually going to back up a slide because I'm going to talk about this blueprint right here, okay? This blueprint for this boat. And I'm going to take a little time with this because this is like, I've been sharing just this right here for over 10 years. And the key point here is we're talking about the levels of consciousness, okay? I'm trying to slow down here because I get really excited teaching about this. And like I said, if I talk too fast, let me know. One of my clients is like, you're going to do great tomorrow, but just don't talk too fast. I'm like, okay, thanks. Thanks for the tips. So we have 3 different levels of the mind, or consciousness, excuse me. We have the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, and then we have the unconscious, and that's essentially where the shadow is, which we're going to talk a bit more today, okay? Now, here's where the challenge arises, is that when I show you this picture, the key point, you can see over here, right? I can back up a little more. Scoot back just a little bit. Make sure you can see. I meant to do that. So, the key thing here, and this is where I've had tremendous amount of success as a coach, okay? You know, you go to any fitness coach and get great results, but it's really about what's going on in the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind only works on images. So when I say an image in the subconscious mind, you could have a limiting belief. Like I said, you could work out, exercise, eat healthy all you want, but if you have a subconscious belief of, I'm not worthy of love, money doesn't grow on trees, my feelings aren't valid, I'm not good enough, or I'm a victim, you're gonna have limited results. So what I mean specifically by this, and like I said, I taught this for years and was very successful talking about losing weight, getting in shape and all that stuff, but you have this goal. So I'm taking you guys on a little journey here. We're gonna go boating. Who likes boating? Oh, everyone's, let's go get on a boat and do this presentation. So essentially we have this goal, okay? You could apply this to so many areas of your life. You wanna lose weight, get in shape, make more money, attract true love, maybe even go to an island destination. That was one of my goals years ago. I did 4 trips to Southeast Asia. I was meditating with monks in Cambodia. That was pretty cool. So you could have this goal. We'll relate it to fitness because we're at a gym today. So fitness or diet, let's say that. You want to lose weight, get in shape. Now you could be consciously, you're rowing towards your goal, okay? You got the sail set, you got the propeller set, and you're just mowing along here, and you are like, I'm losing weight, I'm getting in shape, okay? You're doing all this stuff above the surface to get the results that you deserve, okay, or that you want. Now here's where the challenge is, all right? You could be fighting your own subconscious mind, which is the current, okay? Very powerful point there. And so the reason why I share this picture is like each person's a little bit different. We all have our different blocks. I'm gonna show you some tools on how to overcome those blocks. And where could you be self-sabotaging yourself from the subconscious or unconscious mind? We're gonna get into the unconscious in a moment. Is this all making sense so far? Okay, I'd like to check in. Am I going too deep into the ocean too soon? You know? So the key thing here, if you take one thing away from what I shared with you guys today, what could be blocking you subconsciously? And we talk about shadow work. It could be trauma from our past or experiences. That's where we have what's called limiting beliefs. And I've been very blessed to coach a lot of world-class life coaches who shared this with me. I was like, oh, wait, like, there's all this stuff. What's the subconscious? It was like 8 years ago, and I was like, oh, that's where the real gold is. Actually, the gold is in the unconscious, which we're going to get into in a moment. So what happens is, you're like rowing your butt off, literally like on a rower. Like, you guys like rowing? I got a rower at my house. You could be rowing, you're going to lose all this weight, going to get in shape. But if you're fighting the subconscious, you will see limited results. So I had a lot of success early on public speaking as a coach by teaching people how to shift this current to get the subconscious, taking them towards their goals. Now here's where another challenge arises. Many people, maybe some of you, this has actually been me, or maybe it's somebody that you know, They're not even at the front of the boat. They're sitting here, switching pens. You can't take the cap off for too long, it dries out. So you could be sitting here on the back of this boat, looking at the wake of the ship, which is slowly disappearing. Now the problem is, where's the boat going, right? And this is, like I said, the levels of your consciousness. So you're sitting here on the back of this boat, you want to get to this goal, and you're just drifting off in the current, and the current's taking you away from your goals, okay? And this is where it gets a little bit deeper. Now, many people in society, like I said, this is where I've had a lot of success. We're dropping the black. We're going to go green, baby. Green is lovely. Now, many people, what they've done, this is where we're getting into the shadow, they've actually thrown an anchor into the water, or multiple anchors into the water. And those anchors have latched onto a rock deep in the unconscious mind. And this is where, like I said, this is the real power here as we get into the shadow work. I'm going to keep referring back to this picture as we go through more of my slideshow. I just had to show off my lovely whiteboard skills to you guys. But so what happens is, this is where the real change occurs. So you're sitting here and you're latched on to your past, your unconscious mind, and you're latched onto something down in the unconscious mind. And that'll be more clearly defined for you guys today. And you're literally just going in circles. There's no change. Like, why am I not attracting the love that I deserve? Why am I not making more money? Why am I not losing weight? Okay? And it could be a variety of things. You can apply this to any one of you guys' lives, or maybe somebody you know could be struggling with this. Okay? So the key thing here, the essence of what I'm sharing with you guys today, is how to do some work within yourself to recognize where you could be blocking yourself subconsciously, where you could cut these anchors or pull them back on board, and get to the space where you can even get rid of this oar. And through Taoist philosophy, the current will take you to where you deserve to be with a fraction of the effort. Does that make sense? It's like a powerful point. I want to make sure that lands for you guys. So we're going to go out on a boat now and go rowing and stuff, right? So that's the key essence of what I'm sharing today. And as I mentioned, I'm going to keep referring back to this, and we're going to dive into this guy in a moment too. So my little trusty clicker here. So I talked about myself a little bit, all good stuff. So the challenge, okay? Has anybody here ever heard of the Hegelian dialectic? Most people haven't, it's okay.
Say that again.
Hegelian dialectic. So the Hegelian dialectic, what that means is there's a problem, there's a solution, and there is a result, okay? So I'm going through that today, but first I want to address what the problem is. And I'm going to share with you guys as the presentation goes on, the solution and the result. I kind of did that a little bit already with this picture. So the challenge or the problem that we have today is a fractured healthcare system, okay? That's one of the major issues when we're talking about mental and emotional health and as it pertains to fitness and diet and whatnot. Now, our fractured healthcare system, COVID, I'd say a lot of people in this room, including myself, we went through some form of trauma, or somebody that you know experienced some form of trauma during COVID. We all experienced a level of isolation, right? Anybody here experience that, or know somebody who experienced that, right? So the key thing here is, how do we start to address this emotional frequency? What's going on in the unconscious, okay? And that's actually the beautiful thing, in my opinion, about COVID. We'll find that in the darkness, there's always some light. Through the experience of COVID, before that, if you talked about trauma, people are like, no, don't talk about that. But like now, I talk about trauma, it's like, yeah, like that we got to talk about that. And so in that essence, I think it's beautiful that now we can have more comfortable conversations, because like I said, maybe not you, but somebody you know could benefit from what I'm sharing with you guys today. But going deeper into this, the problem with the healthcare system, or the challenge, is doctors are overprescribing drugs. We have an opiate epidemic. Does anybody agree with that? Thank you. So I'm like, are they going to agree? Because you look at, we're just numbing emotions versus actually healing. And that's the essence of my teaching. I had so many clients over the years, and part of the reason why I'm here is Alice, where I've helped one of her friends get in great shape and started to reduce the amount of prescription drugs that she was taking. Because when you make some subtle changes, specifically in these areas, you don't need to take so many drugs, okay? So that's the essence of what I'm attempting to teach today. I want to share this with more people. One of the things that I'm doing in my personal life is I'm actually building my own online school called the Alchemy Healing Academy. That's why I'm working with the Daoist shaman. That's why I'm working with the Oriental medical doctor. I'm learning from their schools, and my goal is to eventually build my own. I'm going to build my own system for teaching all this, and then I want to do more workshops. I want to teach more of this stuff in person as well, just to plug some of the stuff I'm doing down the road. Now, Western medicine, this is not just my opinion. Some of these books over here, this book right here, and also, has anybody heard of Dr. Joe Dispenza? Anybody? One of my favorites. Yeah, Pops, you still have to read the book, though. He steals my books, and he doesn't even read them. Sorry to call you out. But Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about this. Sue Morter talks about this. Sue Morter was actually a mentor of mine back in the day, is that Western medicine is not acknowledging our emotions. We're just numbing the emotions. So essentially, we're dealing with the effects, but we're not getting to the root causes. And when we talk about root causes, that's here, the unconscious, the shadow, okay? So when we start working with that, as we're going to get into today, we also recognize the high cost of medical services. Do you guys all agree? It's like way too expensive. You like go to the doctor, or like you have an emergency. I had a client that had an emergency, and like you go to the doctor, and like it's like everything's like triple the cost if you go to the store. It's like insanity. So we don't need to go too deep into that, but the healthcare system is overwhelmed too. I mean, like I don't want to like sit here and talk bad about all Western medicine. There's some great doctors. There's some great therapists out there, but they're all booked. It's hard to get to them. So that's why I'm like, as an entrepreneurially minded person, how do we address that problem? How do we solve that problem or this challenge that we have by creating my own school? So you can learn this stuff before you need to go to a therapist, before you need to drug some kind of issue that you have within yourself. Does that sound good? Right? That's what this is all about. All right, so this is the challenge. Let's talk about how to manage that challenge, okay? And essentially what this comes down to is what's called the quantum model of reality. So has anybody ever heard of quantum thinking or quantum physics? Yeah, raise your hand high. All right, cool. We got some quantum physicists in here. I love it. So the quantum model of reality, this is the first thing that I teach in my book. And it's actually the first thing that some of these other people over here teach in their books. Because we have to shift our framework of our mindset, okay? Because a lot of it comes down to, what is this image in our subconscious mind? We have to address that. And when we go deeper into the shadow, we start figuring out what this image is in the unconscious mind. Now, what is quantum thinking? This is the first, like I said, the first thing that I teach in my coaching practice, with my book and then my video course. And we're going to simplify this, okay? There's two ways of seeing the world. First, skipping ahead, from the 3D Newtonian particle or the quantum wave-like model. Now, to express that more deeply, I have this little picture here. Like I said, showing off my whiteboard skills. So here we have the Newtonian model. Oop, I keep doing that. There we go. We have the 3D model, which is linear, okay? Then we have the quantum model, which is wave-like. Now, I'll be honest with you guys, they're both just lines. One's just wiggly and one's straight, okay? So let's be clear on that. But there's a big difference in how we see this. Now, in an example in 3D, we perceive things as good or bad. And we're going to go deep into that, good or bad. What happens is we get stuck in duality. Our mind's like, this is good, this is bad. What am I going to do? And like we're trying to balance all these good and bad things that have happened in our lives. But when we operate from this quantum model, there is no such thing as good or bad. And some of you might be like, but there are all these bad things happen to me. And the whole goal here is to share with you, like at this moment, you can create a shift in your consciousness and operate from that quantum model of consciousness, and you see an infinite number of possibilities. Or I like to say, unlimited potential from the quantum model. And I have this quote here by Shakespeare. There is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. So I put that up there to kind of sell you more on this idea of quantum thinking. Because this is what happens to many people, and this is where these two pictures actually coincide with one another, is that many people, and Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about this a lot, he does workshops all over the world. And I was like, this is freaking gold. So I'm just teaching my own interpretation of this, is that many people, they're taking their past, kind of like a peer, and they're actually creating their future based upon their past because their unconscious mind is actually running the show. And they're stuck in this duality of this bad thing happened to me, this good thing happened to me, and they're identifying. Their ego is identifying. There's nothing bad about the ego, but if you over-identify with the ego, it can create a tremendous amount of suffering because often that's related on past experiences. Is this making sense? I just want to make sure. Okay, cool. It's like, sometimes I'm like, am I going too deep? Am I going too deep? I want to make sure this is landing. Now, to express this more, this quantum model of consciousness, okay? To like give you an image, right? Because we want to kind of work on the subconscious mind. Now, many people, as I mentioned, they're stuck here in this 3D Newtonian linear model of consciousness versus operating from this quantum model of consciousness. And we're going to get into this more. We could say that quantum is more like this is yang and this is yin, and it's just a shift. So as we start to see things from a yin and yang perspective, which we're going to go deeper into as I go into Daoist philosophy, you'll see how things that maybe were so bad could actually become good and vice versa. Now, what happens is, I love this slide because it really expresses this. This is the linear particle. It's like very dense. You see how it's all particles? So this linear model, it's like having all these dots. If you ever talk to somebody who is very dense in their thinking, like they're so dense, like why are they like that? Well, that's essentially them being in this linear model of consciousness. Okay? So what happens in this linear framework, we can't see around our barriers. We're so identified with our past. We're stuck on the back of the boat that we can't see, and we're fighting our subconscious mind, so the current can be taking us completely adrift. So what happens is when we shift from this linear limiting perception of reality, and we move to this quantum model of consciousness. You see how this wave actually starts to move around our barriers. It exposes the shadow. That's the key point here I want to share with you guys. It exposes the shadow. So the key thing here is recognizing where in your life you're still operating from here and how you can begin to operate from this quantum model of consciousness, which is more yin and yang. So the more I studied shadow work, okay, and specifically that one book over there, I'm pointing at my books. I just love my book collection. The Five Spirits talked about shadow work, and then it got into Jungian psychology, and then it got into Daoist philosophy. And I found all these ancient tools are a great framework for, as I mentioned, learning the tools to heal yourself. Now to express this more, has anybody ever heard of the story of the Chinese farmer? Once upon a time, there was a Chinese farmer. And this Chinese farmer had a horse. And the horse ran away. So the people of the town came to the Chinese farmer. They were like this. They said, "Oh my God, that's so bad that your horse ran away." And the Chinese farmer said, "Maybe." On the next day, the horse came back and brought 3 wild horses with him. And so the people of the town came to the Chinese farmer and said, "Oh my God, that's so good that your horse brought these 3 wild horses back with them." And the Chinese farmer said, "Maybe." On the 3rd day, the Chinese farmer's son went to go tame one of the wild horses, and he fell and broke his leg. And so the people of the town came to the Chinese farmer and said, "That's so bad." And what did the Chinese farmer say? "Maybe," because he was here. On the final day, the military came to take the Chinese farmer's son to go to war where he would surely die. But he'd fallen and broken his leg. And the people of the town came to the Chinese farmer and said, "Oh my God, that's so good that your son fell and broke his leg." And what did the Chinese farmer say? Maybe. And so the people of the town, and this is most people in society, they're stuck in this linear model of consciousness, making them very dense. They're stuck, and it's not bad or good. Okay? They're just anchored into their past, old belief systems. But the farmer, he saw the unlimited potential because he was operating from the quantum model. Is this making more sense now? The story always helps people. They're like, "Oh, Chinese farmer's cool. We'll go plant some vegetables." All right? So I want to make sure that makes sense for you guys. Now with that said, speaking of the Chinese farmer, let's talk about some Daoist healing philosophy. Remember, to heal means to make whole. And also, philosophy, what does the word philosophy mean? Does anybody know? Philo is love, Sophia is wisdom. It's the love of wisdom, okay? So the Daoist healing is that to learn to heal thyself, and it's the love and the wisdom of it. All right, so just to touch on this again with this Daoist philosophy and this yin, we're going to touch on this a fair amount to make sure we understand this polarity of yin and yang nature. So here's the bad, here's the good, here's the bad that is in the good, here's the good that is in the bad, and here's life, okay? So the key thing here is I still get stuck here. I'm not trying to say I'm here all the time, you know? The key is to be able to oscillate between the two. Because you're going to have people, I teach this to people, and you'll have people in your life that are really stuck here, but when you learn how to oscillate between these two, it creates so much freedom. The people that I coach are like, "Oh my God, my mom or my dad or my uncle, they're so linear, they can't understand how to navigate their emotions because they could have a very dense emotion running their lives." And this will make more sense as I keep going. So Daoist philosophy. Who's ever heard of Taoism? Yes, I love it. I love it. I think I already asked that, but I love talking about it. So Taoism is an ancient form of philosophy, the love of wisdom. Taoism with the T is the ancient name. Taoism with the D is the modern term. I'm just old school. I like the T. I like the letter T better than D. Don't judge me, all right? So T for Taoism. So the essential principle of the Tao is living in balance and harmony with nature. And I love that. I love that because I love being in nature. I love meditating. I was up in Bodega Bay last weekend. It was gorgeous. Now, from nothing or the formless is born the one form, which is the Tao. Okay? From the one is born the two, which is yin and yang. These are the configuring principles of masculine and feminine. So it's really about a harmony of you say these are two fish or two sides of a mountain or this darkness and light because it's the polar opposites. So the key essence of this is learning how to recognize this yin and yang energy and how you're balancing it in your life. If you don't understand that now, when you get through these next two slides, it'll make more sense. Now, the key thing here to recognize is that it's all about living in harmony with nature or natural law. I even have a whole presentation just on natural law. That's the foundational principle of Taoism. Now, the reason why I love teaching this, I want to say I'm not religious in any way. I just love plucking wisdom from different belief systems and philosophies and just sharing that because I think there's a lot of gold in ancient philosophy. Now, the key thing that I love about Taoism, because it's all about harmony with nature. Now, don't get me wrong, I love technology. This is all great. But in like the last 200 years, we've had major advancements in medicine and technology, but a lot of the world's living in spiritual poverty. We're so disconnected from our hearts. And what's the leading killer in America? Heart disease, right? And a lot of that comes down to our disconnection from our spirit. When I say spirit, just talking about your breath. We're going to do breath work later. I want to use that breath, invigorate the body, some chi, life force energy. And like one of my long-term goals is to build my own mini retreat center where I can get people back out into nature, take people's phone away for a weekend so we can just really ground ourselves and get in touch with our hearts. Like that's like, just like, oh, can't wait to do that. And that's why I love Daoist philosophy, because that's the essence of it, is teaching people how to get reconnected to nature. Because if we do that, the body has a greater propensity to heal itself. One of the challenges we have, and like Alice has me coaching the Novato and San Marin mountain biking teams. It's just really fun, but you see some of these kids, they're like going to break their necks. They're like, walking like this. I'm like, get off Instagram, we're going to do some push-ups, let's go, guys. And so like, don't get me wrong, technology's great, right? But we have to have a balance. And that's why I'm so keen to teaching this wisdom to people. You guys feel me on that or what? I was like, even me, like I'm on my phone, I'm like get it away from me. I got to go outside. I mean, like, got to have a break. It's all about that balance. And that's why we're going to get into more of this Daoist wisdom. So has anybody here studied yin and yang principles that much? That's great. Oh, there we go. I love it. So like I got into this and it really helped me to balance myself out, realizing like my own imbalances. Like years ago, I was running 2 gyms. I actually had a film studio that was nominated Best Small Business in Novato twice. I had an Airbnb. I had an online business. I was making 6 figures. I was helping lots of people. It felt good. Yay, all that great stuff. On the surface, it looked great. But I hadn't done my shadow work. I had back pain showing up. I went to all these doctors, went to therapists, and I realized I was too yang. I was too much of my yang energy. And I'll probably touch on that more. And once I started to learn how to calm myself down, calm down my nervous system, this is why the breath work is so powerful, that's when my body started to heal itself without drugs, without having to go to all this different stuff. That's why I was like, I had to go through my own journey. I had to go through my own dark night of the soul to be able to teach this stuff. And even right now, you look at the world, like we're in the season of winter, right? Right here. And we want to have a balance between these two, but we're going to say this a few times. Most of the world is too much in this yang energy. We're burning ourselves out. Now, I love this slide. It like really breaks it down. It's a lot here. I'll leave it up there for a minute. But as I mentioned a moment ago, the majority of society is excessively in our yang energy. We're dominating, men and women alike. We're dominant, aggressive, overly controlling, very rigid. Rigid is right here, very linear. You'll notice that this is more masculine, this is more feminine. It's more wavy flow-like, okay? Neither one is right or wrong, but recognizing the imbalances is where the real power is. So we have a lot of anxiety. It's like one of the things that I think is funny, it's like, people used to live in caves and be like chased by saber-toothed tigers. I think we have more anxiety today and people live with more luxury than kings 100 years ago. Isn't that crazy? Like, I'm just like, it's wild. Probably comes back to the overstimulation of technology and being too much in this yang energy. I get anxiety sometimes, but I've learned the tools to heal myself and calm my nervous system down. Too much forcing, people are distant. So this is the excessive yang. I'm not going to go over all of these. I just want to touch on that because that's a key point, the excessive yang. What we really would like to be, see how this is represented right here, too much yang. This is where we're at mostly in society. And we're going to hit this, we're going to really hit this today because it's a big challenge that we're facing. We want to be more here, balanced feminine, more compassionate. I love the word compassion because I remember I watched this video, I forget where it was, but this Buddhist monk said, they said, what's the most important word in the English language? He said compassion. I like the word compassion because it's like the word compass and passion combined, compassion. If you guys can't tell, I'm like a wordsmith. I'm like always looking at words and finding like, oh, there's little hidden wisdom in there. Also introspection. A lot of people aren't looking within themselves. They're all externally oriented. More flow state. We're going to talk more about that. More wisdom, more intuition. A lot of people, they're so in their heads. I'll talk about this more when we get into the breath work. The Daoist shaman taught us. Most people, their chi is so much in their heads because their minds are so busy. This is yang, this is more yin. So we have to learn, especially like with the breath work later, to drop that chi energy down into the body. When the chi starts to drop, the nervous system is more calm, and that's part of when your body can heal itself. It's so beautiful. I've experienced it. I'll talk more later about when I got into my breath work practice. It literally saved my life. Also, being more patient. I had to learn that. Like I said, I was too yang years ago. Being more receptive. People are like, why am I not receiving the life that I deserve? You become more yin, more receptive. That's where this current shifts, and you're just going towards your goals naturally. It's a good picture, huh? She's like, I like that one. And you can find, I found this one online. This is beautiful stuff right here. And also creativity. When you're too yang energy, you're not going to be very creative. You're not going to be in that flow state. Very powerful here. Now let's go over balanced masculine. We're not going to go over all of them, just these three. So more valor, assertion, direction, methodical thinking, because you're more balanced with your wisdom and intuition, right? Because they're balanced. You're going to be able to take action. You'll be more giving, because when you're receiving more, you can give more. I'll tell you right now, I've been coaching mothers for years. When I was running my gyms, they called me the mommy whisperer. It was a little creepy. But I was helping so many moms lose weight. My mom didn't even hire me to coach her for 5 years. She's like, you're doing a really good job. She started working with me, lost 60 pounds in 5 months. A lot of it was mindset. Like when I talk about subconscious mind, we changed her association with sugar, and boom, it's like the fat melted off. That was like my greatest accomplishment. Help your own mom lose 60 pounds. My mom's stubborn too. I'm glad she's not here. But she lost 60 pounds in 5 months, right? And then my dad too, he lost 30 pounds working with me as well. That's right, Pops. And here's the key thing here, balanced masculine is consciousness, because you've harmonized these, conscious, subconscious, and unconscious. And then I'm not going to talk about it today. There's even a fourth level. There's super consciousness. That's like the dope, crazy, elevated stuff. We're not going to get into that. Next presentation. But does this make sense? You see the imbalances. That's why I love teaching this. Like in my video course and also in my book, talk about boundaries. Remember years ago when I was coaching the CEO of WB, I was like, I'm trying to figure out one more chapter for my book. She talk about boundaries. A lot of people have poor boundaries. People are people pleasers. They're like taking care of everybody. Like the thing I was going to say about coaching mothers. I can't tell you how many mothers you're giving, and you're not taking enough time to receive. And that was so profound. So many mothers that I coached, when they realized that and learned how to become more yin and balance everything out, then their lives change with less effort. Remember I was telling you guys? With less effort. Our mind thinks we have to be constantly busy, and we drive ourselves nuts. I've done it. I've been there. I'm learning more and more. Just like my meditative, every day I do my meditative work, just calm myself down. If you're too much, if you're a woman and you're too much feminine, you're gonna have misery in your life. You gotta have some yang too, because you're able to push yourself forwards. And there's a lot of talk about men, women, and sexuality and stuff. That has nothing to do with that. This is about ancient principles. I always like to make clear. I post stuff in there are you saying this about men? I'm like, no, I'm talking about ancient wisdom. So I always want to make sure that I premise that. This is about ancient philosophy, the love of wisdom. Part of the yin energy, and a lot of people, even myself, struggling with too much yang energy, is you have to control everything. And part of healing generational trauma in my own family as well, from traumas, you have to control things. But the yin is surrender. When you're really able to surrender into your feminine nature, the Tao begins to move through you. The Tao tends to move through empty places. Because when our cup is too full, that's a lot of yang energy. I have a whole presentation on Taoism and Wu Wei. We're going to touch on that for sure. But it's all about emptying your cup, because the cup isn't worth anything. It's the space within the cup. And what I mean by that specifically with all of you is your nervous system. If your nervous system is very jacked up, you could be like me. You're making good money. You're helping lots of people. But I had back problems. I'm like, why do I have back problems? It wasn't until I started calming, getting to my yin, my feminine nature, and then things, boom, they started to shift for me with less effort. Okay? Does that answer your question? And we're going to go deeper into that too, because it's that's the gold. In the shadows, there is absolute gold. But we have to face the dark aspects. So let's keep going here. I love that slide. I found that a few days ago. This is gold. All right, so wait. How are shadow work in Taoism / yin and yang connected? So we're going to keep touching more on this yin and yang nature. So who here likes Carl Jung or studied or heard of Carl Jung? Yes, I'm a big fan. Big fan of Carl Jung, Jungian psychology. So kind of like we talked about, are you too yin or too yang? And how does this relate to shadow work? So shadow work essentially is working with and harmonizing these two, okay? So let's begin with stating that shadow work is essentially making the unconscious conscious, okay? Making the unconscious conscious. I didn't even say this right here. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. All right, I skipped ahead. Sorry about that. But what it means is people they're stuck going in circles, the boat, because they haven't faced their unconscious stuff. So they're anchored to this unconscious wound where they don't feel worthy of love, and they can't escape it until they do this inner work. This is the essence of the inner work. Okay? Another story I like to say, I read this in this one book I thought was great, is let's say you're a little boy or a little girl, and you are going to your mom or your dad, and you're like, I want to be loved. And maybe your parents had some trauma, and they shame you. And you're like, I want to be loved. And you get shamed again. And I just want to be loved. And you're ashamed. And so you're your unconscious goes, wait, shame equals love. And you're like, oh my God. And then you're an adult, you're out trying to date, and then you keep dating people who shame you. And you're like, why is this happening to me? And so I'm making it sound funny because it's not funny, but you're trying to date, and shame's just an example where you're holding on to this emotion in the unconscious mind. And your unconscious mind is like, oh, you're not going to face the shame? Well, you're going to keep reliving it. And your unconscious mind doesn't give a crap about your ego. It's going to keep making you relive it over and over again. You're going to be stuck in this cycle until you start doing this inner work. You're going to go to doctors, you're going to go to chiropractors, you're going to go to a therapist. But until you do the inner work, you're not going to see the change. Does that make sense? That's a very important point. That's why I like sharing that story. Because when I say it could be your parents shame you, or it could be like some of their childhood trauma. And each person, I actually have a whole trauma series of presentations that I made. Trauma is different for each person. Like you two could have the same experience, but you experience it differently. You could hold on to it more or vice versa. So trauma is not what happens to us. It's the energy held within us without compassionate awareness. Okay? And that's the essence of doing the shadow work. And it's much deeper than that, but that's a very simple explanation. But back to this. So let's begin by stating that shadow work is essentially making the unconscious conscious. When we do not do this, the unconscious mind will run our lives and often cause havoc from the unconscious state of mind, aka our shadow. Like I said, you're just going in circles. Now, at the most basic level, applying shadow work to your life is creating awareness around how your unconscious mind is blinding you to your potential. Okay? We all have a lot more potential than we realize. And this relates directly not only to Taoism, but also yin and yang energy as it manifests in our reality. Okay? Because as you create more harmony, then things begin to shift. Like I said, it gets a lot easier because the current starts to take you where you were meant to go originally. It's all about just a little bit of reprogramming. Now, an example of this is, as I was saying, when your mind becomes too yang, which is often the case in modern society, we begin to become so logically or linearly oriented that we lose touch with our creative nature or quantum mind, and this limits our ability to creatively solve problems. We get so stuck in remember I talked about over-identification with the ego? The ego's not bad, but if you over-identify with it, you could be stuck here. You could be stuck in your past, and you're creating your future from your past. Joe Dispenza over here talks about this as well. This can lead to a range of physiological and psychological health problems. Hence, when you do shadow work, applying yin and yang principles, you can heal yourself. You guys dig that or what? Does that make sense? So just to give you another example. So it's like, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a therapist, okay? I just like sharing this wisdom because I think it's super cool. It's fun to share. So there's this, I actually talk about this in my book. There's this, I saw a chiropractor here in town, Dr. Doug DeSalvo. Anybody worked with DeSalvo? Great guy, awesome dude. And he recommended me read this one book. And he's like, you're a nerd, you're gonna love this book. I'm like, yeah, how'd you know I'm a nerd? And so I was reading this book by Dr. Thurman Fleet. And he's this guy that died back in the day, but he was so successful at healing people as a doctor, they had to change the roadways. He was out in San Antonio because there were so many people coming to see him. And right? So what happened is the thing that he really focused on, natural law, which is basically Taoist principles, is that he started focusing on the fact that the people that he was seeing, they weren't dealing with the root cause, which was the emotional pain. What happens is, when we go to doctors and therapists, often they're working with the physiology, which is like, that's actually the effect, okay? And then your mind goes like, why am I not healing? There's something wrong with me. And then you start having psychological health problems. But it was really the emotional thing in the first place. And that's not my opinion. That's what I learned from 2 doctors expressed that to me. So when we're holding on to the emotional frequency, it can start to manifest within the physical body. And that's a lot of what 5-element theory is. We'll touch on that towards the end. I have some great presentations on that as well. So society is unconscious. We're stuck here in this shadow, okay? We're out of balance with nature and the Tao. As I was mentioning earlier, technology is great, but we're out of balance. Too much overstimulation, including myself. Too much yang energy, which is externally oriented in a masculine world. We are actually seduced by this yang energy, but this is causing us, it's the root cause of our anxiety and causing us to burn out. Do you guys agree with that? Right? Me too, like I said, me too. It's happened to a lot of us, or people that we love. They're like so addicted to all this technology. Don't get me wrong, technology is great, but it's out of balance. So we're always doing, rather than being. Yin is listening, yin is receiving. I love this because my dad's a sound mixer. So it's like, I always say that part of what makes me a great coach is I'm really good at listening. My father always taught me that the heart, right, the center of the word heart is ear. We have to learn to listen with our heart. If you take them, I always say, as my dad said, you take your ears and put them together, it's the shape of a heart. Because a lot of people are not listening with our hearts. We're always listening to respond. That's yang, that's masculine. When we learn to listen with our hearts, then we can really ingest what people have to say. We can listen from our hearts, and that's when we truly grow. That's how we solve heart disease, guys. We have to learn to listen to our own hearts, and then we'll be able to listen to other people more deeply as well. You guys feel me on that, or what? That was deep. My dad taught me that. It's like, yes, Dad. Good mentoring, Pops. Thanks. You don't want to end up like this guy, right? So change comes from within. This is yin energy or magnetic. So this is a little more deeper alchemy stuff, is that masculine energy is electric, feminine energy is magnetic. Masculine energy is electric, feminine energy is magnetic. So when I talk about that yin feminine energy, that's where it's like a magnet. Like the water takes you to your goal. So when you get really deep, I was saying like we're kind of on this boat, but in actuality, your body's made of water. When the body of water is calm, then the current takes you to where you're always meant to go. It's a little more esoteric. Hopefully it makes sense. Now, who's heard of the law of cause and effect? Yeah, of course. Who hasn't heard of cause and effect? Jeez. So we should all learn cause and effect because a lot of us are just dealing with the effects in our lives. When you're just dealing with effects, you're just going in circles. And kind of to go along with the boat analogy, this one coach said, when you're just dealing with effects, it's essentially like you're on the Titanic and you're rearranging the deck chairs. And you're like, oh, the deck chairs look great. It's sinking. It's not going to fix anything. Like things look great on the surface. I took this new drug. I'm like doing this thing. It's like, what's the root cause? Okay. Like I said, it's a joke, but we want to learn how to work with cause and effect. So our nervous system gets actually addicted to this yang or peacock energy. Peacock, you're just showing off your tail feathers. Everybody's on social media, literally showing off their butt, showing off their toys, showing off their cars. There's like, it's like excessive. And like growing up behind the scenes of Hollywood with my father, I was around a lot of wealthy and successful people. Not all of them are happy. We see them on TV and we think they're all happy and their lives are amazing. They have traumas too. I've coached multimillionaires. Not everyone is happy. There's a lot of stuff going on below the surface. So it's not just you or me. We all have stuff to do. We all have work to do. But this causes adrenal burnout, overstimulation. It's one of the leading causes of addiction, where we're numbing that overstimulation with drugs and whatnot. Yin energy actually stimulates the calming parasympathetic nervous system, and this is the breath work, which we're going to get a taste of today. I'm going to share a recording with you guys that you can actually get for free on my YouTube channel too. We'll do that at the end. We are going to do a little break before that too. I'm making pretty good time. Also, when you're calmer, a lot of people, problems are in the gut. So your enteric system, nervous system, which activates your gut instinct and digestion, becomes more calm. You're going to be more intuitive. It's going to be easier to make decisions. Okay? Then cultivating energy also creates more balance, because we talked about that harmony. As you become more yin, there's this word in alchemy where it's called enantiotremia. The more we actually go into the darkness, it actually polarizes into the light. And when we look at the world today, what you were saying earlier about the fentanyl, it's terrible. But part of it is I feel on some level and through my studies, everything that's happening in the world right now, it's not good or bad. We're just going deeper into the darkness. And the more people we get to do this work, why I'm up here, why I wrote this book, which I'm going to hand out soon, is the more people we get to actually face the darkness will actually turn into light. And that's where I'm really grateful for where we're at, because I totally feel you. I want to reach more teens. What if we start teaching teens emotional intelligence? How big of a change will we see in the world? That's why I want to create a teen version of teaching this as well. Maybe we'll do that with the next group. Yeah? Who knows? All right, so this is one of the most powerful slides. Okay, it's in my book as well. Give him the books out soon. I know you guys are excited. I want his book. No. So this is where a lot of people get stuck. So you can look at areas of your life too, maybe somebody that you love. I always like to say, it's like maybe this isn't you, but there could be somebody you love, your aunt, your uncle, your cousin, your gerbil. I don't know who they're struggling. Who's a pet gerbil? Anybody? Just a joke. So you get stimulated. You get yelled at work, or maybe your mom or your dad, they trigger you, and your mind creates this meaning. I'm not worthy of love. I'm not worthy. My feelings aren't valid. And you experience this emotion. This emotion creates a hormonal response, and it creates a behavior. You're eating ice cream again, or you're drinking alcohol, or you're smoking pot, or you're doing cocaine, or whatever it is, okay? And the key thing here is I had clients for years, how do I change this behavior, okay? And you don't really, it's figure out what's the root cause. We're talking about cause and effect. What is the cause that's creating the behavior? Because a lot of people, they're getting triggered, they're going right to the emotion and the behavior. Triggered, emotion, behavior. This is why the yin energy is so powerful. Because as you slow down, this is why I do regular breath work. My mind's sharp. My girlfriend, she's like, you're a quadruple air sign. If you guys are into astrology, she's super into you're a quadruple air sign. You're super sharp, but you got to be extra grounded. I'm like, damn it, I got to meditate more? I'm sick of this. So I have to do this myself. And some of you may be that same way. But when you do your meditation, you do your breath work, you get more into your body, you slow down. And instead of your mind being too fast and linear, you slow down. When you get triggered, you pay attention to your triggers, and you start to create new meaning. Very powerful. The real change is when you start changing the emotional frequency, okay? When the emotional frequency changes, then your behaviors change. Is that clear? You guys, does that make sense? Because this is where people are really struggling. They're triggered, they're emotional, and they're the same old behaviors. It's just this right here. You get triggered and the same stuff. You're just in circles. Like I was saying, I told you I was going to keep coming back to this. I just like showing off my picture here. But people are just going in circles and they're stuck here. Now here's the thing. This goes both ways. You start to learn what your triggers are. That's one of the first things that I talk about in my book when we get into shadow work. What are your triggers? Then you're creating new meaning. Instead of spiraling downwards in life, you start spiraling upwards because you start changing your behaviors. And that's where some of the real gold is here, because it's all about introspection into what's going on in your life. Because it's like, that's when you start digging. I mean, there's another way of looking at it, like this is why I wore this shirt. You know, if you want the tree to grow, you got to grow the roots. And that's in the darkness. And this is why a lot of people don't know, and be like, that's why I'm so keen to teaching this wisdom. I mean, I actually don't even really like public speaking. I just love sharing this. So it's like this, I want to get this wisdom out there. So we have to teach more people how to understand why. Why is the tree not growing? You're not planting the roots. You know what I'm saying? You got to go into the darkness and nourish those roots, and then the tree grows. So why is this showing up for me? Okay? Great question. It's all about introspection. We have to slow down to do that, though. That's more yin. That's more feminine. It's more calm energy. Like I said, I struggle with that myself. Still working on it. So, calmness in the quantum field, the cosmic web. Okay, this is a little bit deeper slide. We're going to go deeper in. We're getting out of the kiddie pool. All right, so the cosmic web. Quantum theory forces us to see the universe not as a collection of physical objects, but as a complicated web of relations between the various parts of a unified whole. Hopefully that makes sense. So it's all interconnected. We'll keep going. What this means is that the human observer defines the properties of reality, and thus, when we calm our inner nature, kind of like I was saying, that yin energy, we also calm the external nature of reality, or consciousness. And this is how, the word how is essentially the Tao, we heal ourselves and others through Wu Wei. And I have another slide that's going into Wu Wei. Anybody heard of Wu Wei? Oh, this is going to be exciting. I have a whole presentation on Wu Wei. We could do a Wu Wei day in here. It'd be great. So what quantum theory does is it destroys the concept that the world is sitting out there separate from us. We are that. Okay, it's a little bit abstract. This is where the unity of all things is reached. So what happens is it gets you out of this concept where the world's happening to me. It's like, wait, the world's happening for me. Do you see those subtle shifts there? I make it sound really easy because it's not for different people. But it's like you can shift like your past experiences, your traumas, and the unconscious, and like bring them to the surface. And then instead of it sitting out there separate from us, we realize we are that. This is where the shift occurs in the quantum model. Now, what we call individuality dissolves into an undifferentiated oneness. This is the essence of harmony with our yin and yang nature. We are one with all things as the observer and the observed are one. It's really just an energetic frequency that defines our reality. That's a key point here, an energetic frequency, okay? Now what that means is this next slide, we can look here. This is from Dr. Joe Dispenza. You'll notice that we have dense, slow emotions like shame, suffering, victimization, pain, lust. And you notice how these are more linear. This is a very important point here. These are more linear. So when you're stuck with these lower vibrational emotions, you're essentially stuck here in the Newtonian plane, okay? Then as you do your breath work, you calm yourself down, you do your meditation, then you're able to move to more higher frequencies. Notice how these look more quantum. So I'm trying to make sure you guys understand this from different angles. Does this make sense? So when you're stuck in these lower vibrational emotions, it's more linear. You're suffering. Remember, it's not bad or good. It's actually beautiful that you've recognized it. This is a beautiful opportunity to change. So as you start to recognize these things and you start to shift because you start to balance that polarity of that yin and yang nature, then you start living in bliss. This is like Buddhist monks. They own like nothing and they're so happy. Remember I said I was in Cambodia, I meditated with Buddhist monks. You have a freaking sack and you walk around and meditate and you wear sandals? Like, how are you so happy? I'm like used to this Western culture. It was so beautiful to actually experience that. Now, does this make sense? You guys pretty clear on how this all works? It's a lot in this one slide, but these are slower and more dense. Remember I said it's like particles. And as you shift, and this doesn't happen in one presentation, but you start to work through this, you'll be able to oscillate and move to a higher frequency, okay? Now, I'm not going over a lot, going deep. Is this making sense though? You guys with me? Okay, I got a few nods, okay. So, we've got a few minutes to go here, So Taoism and quantum physics. What is quantum thinking? Touching on this one more time. Quantum thinking is what happens when we have a balanced and alchemized yin and yang energy within us. So another way of looking at this is balanced left and right hemispheres of the brain. A lot of mental health is we're operating from one side of the brain too much. So as we start to harmonize that yin and yang nature, this is part of the essence of alchemy, is we're harmonizing left and right hemispheres of the brain. It's the opposite of linear, logical, and rational mind, and this gives way to quantum creative thoughts. Okay, I've said that a few times. You see how some of it is a little bit repetitive. I want to make sure I'm attacking it from different angles. You want to go to war, you don't attack from one angle, you want to go from multiple angles so it really gets in there so it lands for you guys. Okay, so I know I'm repeating myself just slightly with some of this stuff. This is known in Tibetan Buddhism as the inner nature of the mind, also known as Rigpa. That's written in this book right here, the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. I read it twice. The first time I read it, my mother was diagnosed with cancer. I was like, whoa, like my mom lost all her hair, and she's actually totally fine now. Actually, last week she went to the doctor. She's cancer-free. Round of applause for my mom. So happy about that. But I started to get curious about understanding death because I was like, whoa, going through that with my mom, and that's when I started reading that book. And I was like, oh, you're more calm when you access this inner nature of the mind. And so not to get too deep into it, but like working with my mom and the stress of like losing all of her hair and the cancer treatments, I started doing my best to help her to stay more calm. It was very, very, very challenging but beautiful space in my life. Now, this way of thinking is what's known as Wu Wei or flow state, okay? We're gonna get into that in this next slide. It is a state of consciousness where you can heal yourself in a calming essence of awareness. Now, coming back to the point of calming yourself, and I'm speeding up a little bit because I wanna make sure we're on time, is that when you're more yin, as I'm speeding up, I'm gonna calm down, right? I was like, I'm making this presentation, it's gonna remind me to slow down. Be more yin, Odie, you're talking about it. And so, when you're in this flow state, you can heal yourself because your nervous system is calm. Most people, their nervous systems are so jacked up or so busy. So when you're calmer, your body can heal itself. You guys agree with that? That's such an important point. We got to be more calm. So if you let the cloudy water settle, it will become clear. If you let your upset mind settle, your course will also become clear. Alan Watts actually said this quote. Anybody like Alan Watts? He's my spirit animal, actually. I love Alan Watts. Yeah. So what is Wu Wei? This is the art of non-doing. This is like the essence of being really harmonized with yin energy. Wu Wei is non-action, non-striving, and instead allowing. An example is when faced with an obstacle is to allow the muddy water to settle. Okay? Water's muddy. Do you keep making it more muddy, right? So continuing to stir the water is your egoic yang energy, and allowing it to settle is yin. Wu Wei is allowing life to be as it will. Attainment and success become mindless because you are no longer forcing, which allows you to naturally flow through life. You see how that comes right back to here. The current will take you to where you're always meant to be. Your mind's gonna mess you up in some cases. Anybody agree with that? Like, you try to control things too much and you totally messed it up, right? Very powerful point. Now, Tao is essentially the way of nature and essence of the universe. Moving through life with Wu Wei allows us to have an authentic relationship with ourselves because we've balanced that yin and yang nature, because we are living harmoniously with the universe. Instead of fighting and forcing, we let nature take its course. The current will take us where we're meant to be. Our bodies can heal. We can be more calm. We can show up more authentically for the people we love, too. That's why I love teaching this. I teach people this wisdom, and all of a sudden, all their relationships change because they change their relationship with themselves. That's why I love teaching this stuff. When we force our lives to be a certain way, that's yang, and we are actually blind to the Tao. So, let's pass out my book. So, we're going to talk about my book, but how are we doing? You guys having fun? Are you enjoying this?
Yes.
Cool. All right, because this is a deep subject, so I'm like, are people going to dig this, what I'm talking about? So, my book, Shadow Awakening. So, Shadow Awakening, the dawn of human potential. As I was mentioning, the world's going into a dark space, but that's beautiful. This is how we actually come back to the light. So whenever I still have days where I'm like, what is happening in the world? Like you turn on the news, it's like, it's nuts. There's so much wild stuff going on. So I always ground myself. So Odie, you talk about quantum thinking. Come back to your quantum mind, okay? Because this is the opportunity to create change. Now, essentially, my book is a workbook that guides you through the process of shadow work. There's 3 steps. We're just going to touch on them today. Shadow work, shadow integration, and shadow awakening. Now, some of the other chapters, as I mentioned, we went over today. Quantum thinking, emotional mastery, how to set boundaries. That's where we get into the yin and yang stuff. And then how to identify logical fallacies, which is a whole different beast. But my shadow work journey, just to share with you, being up here talking to you guys is part of my shadow work journey. So this is me as a little boy. Oh, look at that little cutie. I had really blonde hair. My dad. You guys know who this is? Who is that?
Kid from the Wonder Years.
Fred Savage. Fred Savage. So my dad, he filmed every episode of The Wonder Years. I grew up around like very wealthy and famous people. Now, one of my, it was funny, I was talking to Alice last night, and we were out getting a couple of drinks with other people from the gym. And she's like, well, Odie, what about your trauma? I was like, Alice, why you gotta call me out? What's up? And so when I started getting into my shadow work, Like, you know, they say they look at all the positives. Like, my dad worked in Hollywood. My dad arguably had one of the coolest jobs of all my friends growing up, and working on the Wonder Years. But for me, oh, there he is. What's up? I was talking about you. Good thing you walked out. You didn't hear it. But my dad hears everything. I remember when I was a kid, I'd come home, and I'd be talking like, oh, yeah, we're going to go party and drink and all this stuff. And I come in the house like, so where are you going? And like, he could hear everything. One of the side effects of having a sound mixer, Dad. Or he'd plant microphones in my room. I'm like, Dad, come on, are you CIA? What's So getting back to my trauma of growing up in Hollywood, I remember like an example. My dad got nominated for an Emmy. I went to the Emmy Awards show, and I was like this little kid. I had a cummerbund on. I got to walk the red carpet. I was like, what is this dumb thing around my waist? I was like spinning it around. I'm like I thought it was so silly. And I remember, honestly, it was fun, but I remember like the crowd screaming at me, asking me for autographs, and I'm just like, it was like so stimulating for me, like overstimulating. And I created this belief that I didn't want to be seen. And so I'll be straight with you guys. Me getting up here and speaking to you guys, I feel that I'm gifted at speaking, but this is part of me healing my own shadow too, is not wanting to be seen. Part of it is like, I know I have a lot of great stuff to share, but I really appreciate you all listening to me, because that's part of like, my little boy, I'm like, I don't want to be seen, I don't want to be famous, I don't want to be rich like all these people, they're nuts. And I got to meet George Lucas that night, which was cool. But like, that's one of the things, sometimes, this is a very powerful nugget of wisdom in shadow work, sometimes what you call a positive trait is your shadow hiding right in front of you. So that's just a nugget to look at within yourself. Because I always thought, oh, it's so cool to have my dad do all this stuff, but there is definitely some shadow aspects where you may not be seeing. Okay, so I just want to be vulnerable and share with you guys some of my story as well. So, a couple slides to go, I promise. Like maybe 3 or 4. So gold mining the shadows. 90% of your shadow is pure gold. It's just the 10% of darkness we have to get through. The first step is to change is like all things, awareness. Awareness. Remember we talked about the trigger? What's the trigger? What's triggering you? That's the first step when I teach shadow work. What's not working in your life? Where are you stuck here? Where's the subconscious mind going against you? Shadow work, the beginning steps, like I said, we're just touching on these. Shadow work is acknowledging the shadow or unconscious emotions that we have been repressed, suppressed, or denied that affect our lives. The guilt, the shame, the anger, the sadness, the grief. For me, I had anger. When I got into anger, I was like, oh, there's actually fear. Oh, there's abandonment. Oh. So like sometimes there's layers to this. That's why getting support, one of the things I was talking with Elise about is we may do is like an 8-week shadow work program where we go through a chapter of my book at a time. If you guys have an interest in that, let me know, because I'd love to do that with you guys. We do like a weekly meeting for like 8 weeks. You got to read my book first, but we'll talk about that. Shadow integration. So you've done shadow work. You're in the shadow, which is like you're working in here, and you've accessed, oh, there's the emotion. There's the thing I'm working with. So reintegration is reintegrating these repressed emotions back into our psyche. And psyche means soul in Greek. So essentially shadow work is soul work. Psyche means soul in Greek. And creating compassionate awareness. This is how we start to heal ourselves. Shadow awakening is being fully conscious of our triggers, how we trigger others, and having transmuted our repressed emotions into our allies. So instead of you repressing your anger, your guilt, and your shame, the more you suppress it, the bigger it gets. It's kind of like if you guys studied psychology, where it's the iceberg thing, right? You see the tip of the iceberg, but there's way bigger stuff below the surface. That's kind of where I got this from. It's a different way of explaining it, okay? So once you become conscious, then you can shift those things. So why do shadow work? The essence of shadow work is getting to the root cause of our pain, understanding the effects. What are the causes? When we get to the root, we can create a more authentic future based upon what we deserve rather than reliving the past. I always tell my clients when I'm working with them, they tell me, well, this is what I want. I was like, I don't care what you want. What do you deserve? You see how we're just reframing that? Instead, I want this. I want to make more money. I want to find true love. Stop wanting. What do you deserve? Well, just by changing your language, now you're attracting it to you because you're saying, this is what I deserve. Your language is very powerful. Like me saying, me and my dad being a sound mixer, as a coach, I really listen deeply to what's the language structure that's creating your reality. It's very powerful. Doing this work allows us to hold bold compassion for others who are struggling mentally and emotionally. My favorite part about this is like with my mother and my father, they've read my book. We can talk about emotional pain. I love when I share my content with other people. Like now, people can have a conversation about their emotions when they've struggled with their parents. Like I had one of my buddies, he's like, I finally talked to my mom about the emotional pain and the abuse from my childhood, and now we've healed. That's gold. That's absolute gold. You can have those types of conversations. So a lot of what I'm teaching people is how to have the vocabulary to express yourself. And I work mostly with women, but there's a lot of men out there that really could use support with expressing their emotional pain. We really need more of that. As you heal yourself, you heal the collective unconsciousness of humanity, and you navigate your life with ease. So we'll take a break there. So thank you all so much. We could take a little break, but absolute a pleasure sharing this. These are some future topics inside the book there. You can look at the survey, and there's some examples. We could talk about 5-element theory. We could talk about Wu Wei. I also teach Chinese face reading, which is really cool, too. I can actually look at people's faces and tell where you're holding on to emotional stuff. Want to learn more? Check out my content. I got Instagram, TikTok, Alchemy Healing Academy. YouTube, Alchemy Healing Academy. My website, I'm just going to say the same thing over and over again. Join my newsletter. You can also, with the survey, you can just leave it on the table over here if you want to join my newsletter. I only send my newsletter out once a month. I hate people who email me too much. So I send it out once a month. I do a complimentary Zoom presentation. This next month is NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming. Does anybody know what NLP is? There we go. I had a feeling you might know what that is back there. So it's basically, I'm teaching you really deep how to reprogram your subconscious mind. I was taught by world-class NLP coaches. And I offer private coaching. And I want to do more speaking engagements. I want to do more workshops here. If you want me to come and DJ your next party, I'm not a DJ. If I do more speaking engagements, actually that's why we're filming today, because we want to get me out there and teach more of this wisdom to other people. But thank you all so much. We'll do a break. So thank you all. Beautiful stuff. Go get some water. Yeah, I'll take some claps. Yes, thank you so much. Thank you. I love you. Get some water. Use the bathroom. 5-minute break, and then we'll do a little breath work. We'll finish a couple minutes late. It's all good.